Connor hadn't spoken to his mother in almost a week, and for the first time in years, his apartment actually felt like a place he could breathe. It wasn't always like this. Once, his mother had been his rock, a fierce protector after his dad died early. But something had shifted in her, slowly at first, then like an avalanche. Maybe it was control. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe she just couldn't stand the idea that another woman could become more important in her son's life than she was. And that woman was Sara. Sara wasn't flashy. She wasn't the type to command attention when she entered a room, but she had a quiet strength that Connor had fallen for hard. She was smart, steady, and she never needed rescuing, not even from his overbearing, toxic mother. They had their own rhythm. Connor brought home most of the income from his job in software security, and Sara ran a successful online shop and freelanced. She handled most of the home chores. He took care of the bills and cooked every weekend. It wasn't 50-50 by the numbers, but it worked. It worked for them, but not for his mother. "She's taking advantage of you," she would hiss through her teeth when Sara wasn't in the room. "She's using your kindness as a free ride." She'd snap at family dinners. "Real women cook every night," she muttered loud enough for Sara to hear as she fake smiled over dessert. Connor had tried to speak up, had tried to draw the line, but every confrontation ended with tears, guilt trips, and passive-aggressive silence that lasted for weeks. His mother weaponized her love like a dagger, and she wasn't afraid to bleed herself with it just to hurt someone else. Sara never demanded that he cut contact. She wasn't that kind of person, but he could see it wearing on her. The quiet sighs, the way she'd fold laundry harder after a visit, how her laughter faded whenever his mother's number popped up on his phone screen. Then came New Year's Eve. They were all at his brother's house. His mother had one too many glasses of cheap champagne and made another comment, this time crueler than ever. "You know, Connor," she slurred, "maybe it's time you find someone traditional, a wife who actually wants to support you, not compete with you." The room fell silent. Sara's hand tightened around her glass, her jaw clenched. She stood up, calmly, controlled. "You're absolutely right," she said with a cold smile. "Connor, we should break up. You deserve someone better, more traditional." She walked out. Connor's stomach dropped. His brain screamed no, but he stayed frozen in place, the room spinning with confusion, horror, and a trace of something else. Understanding, because this wasn't real. This was a plan. The silence that followed Sara's exit was absolute. Connor didn't move. He let the moment sit, heavy in the air like wet concrete. His mother looked stunned, blinking like she was trying to wake up from a nightmare of her own making. His brother Jason shot him a quick glance, a flicker of amusement buried beneath the forced shock on his face. Connor knew the room wasn't just processing what happened. They were watching her, his mother. Because for once, everyone saw the consequence land squarely at her feet. Jason's wife, Megan, who had always been quiet at family gatherings, leaned forward with just the right tone of feigned concern. "Wow. I mean, do you think she left because of something that was said tonight?" Connor's mother flinched. Jason added, "Yeah, Mom, that comment about a traditional wife, maybe not the best timing." And then Megan dropped the hammer. "Or was it something else? I mean, you've said a lot about Sara over the years. Almost makes you wonder, why would someone so loyal just snap?" His mother's eyes went wide. I didn't mean anything by it." Connor stood slowly, running a hand through his hair like a man on the verge of collapse. "It's fine. It's not anyone's fault," he said, voice perfectly hollow. "I should have seen it coming." Then he left the room without another word. Back at his place, the apartment felt cold without Sara. Not because she was gone, but because she'd been the warmth. She'd always been the warmth. But she wasn't far. She was just 2 blocks away, at Megan and Jason's guest room, sipping wine and watching the chaos unfold via group texts. The plan had been her idea. "I'm not going to keep fighting with your mother every time we see her," she'd said weeks earlier. "But if she insists on drama, let's give her a performance she'll never forget." Connor didn't love the idea at first. But after the last incident, a passive-aggressive birthday toast where his mother thanked Sara for putting up with a man like Connor, something snapped in him. Sara wasn't trying to punish her. She was trying to teach her a lesson. A hard one. A necessary one. Now, as Connor sat alone in their shared apartment, he watched the phone light up again and again. Texts from his mother, missed calls, voicemails that started tearful, then angry, then desperate. The shift came on day 3. That's when she left a message sobbing, not for her son's heartbreak, but for her own inconvenience. She left you, and now I have to cook for you? Steam your damn shirts? You don't even know where the iron is. Connor smirked. It had begun, and he wasn't done yet. 3 days into the breakup, Connor's apartment looked like a battlefield, not physically, but emotionally. The couch where Sara used to curl up with a blanket and tea felt foreign now. The air was still, cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your chest, not your skin. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was a scream he couldn't turn off. He missed her laugh echoing from the kitchen when he'd say something sarcastic. The way she hummed old rock ballads while folding laundry. Even her messy stack of unfinished books on the coffee table. Connor didn't realize how deeply she had woven herself into the fabric of his life until she pretended to be gone. But missing her was part of the plan. His mother had to see what she had taken from him. Not just a girlfriend, but a partner. A routine. A home. He made a point to visit her every night at Jason and Megan's house. They kept it low-key, no social media, no slip-ups. But each evening was a tactical briefing. He told her about the day's progress, and she offered calm, cool suggestions like a strategist commanding a flawless operation. She's spiraling, he told Sara on day 4. This morning she showed up with pre-cooked meals. You know, like the frozen kind with labels and love written in Sharpie. Sara laughed. That's terrifying. Are you eating them? Connor made a face. I buried them in the freezer like bodies. That night, his mother called again. This time crying, asking if he needed anything ironed. Ironed. As if she had ever offered that in his adult life. Mom, he said, deadpan, I miss the way Sara used to steam my shirts while we did the crossword together. I can't even look at the New York Times now. She paused. I can try the crossword, she offered weakly. Connor nearly laughed, but he didn't. Let her sit in that awkward silence. By day 5, she was unraveling fast. Megan called to tell him his mother had cornered her in the grocery store and begged her to talk him out of his destructive spiral. Jason had overheard her telling their father that Sara must have been emotionally unstable. No real woman just leaves like that without warning. But the real break came the next night. Connor opened his door and found his mother standing there with puffy eyes, a gift basket clutched in her trembling hands. Seize candy. The good stuff. Can I come in? She asked, her voice cracking. Connor stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, like she was entering a church or a courtroom, maybe both. I was wrong, she whispered. He said nothing. I thought you loved her enough to just let me say things. I assumed you'd always choose me. I didn't think it mattered what I said about her, that it wouldn't reach her. Connor turned to face her. You never saw her, Mom. You only saw what she wasn't. She wasn't traditional. She wasn't your idea of a good wife, but she was good to me. His mother's eyes filled again. I thought if I kept pushing, she'd work harder to keep you happy, that she'd step up. No, he said, his voice low and calm. You pushed her out. She dropped the basket on the table. Just tell her I'm sorry. Tell her she was right. I owe her. And I'll stay out of your life if that's what it takes. Connor didn't answer. Not then. He waited until the door closed behind her. Then he sat down at the table, picked up a piece of chocolate, and texted Sara. She cracked. Full apology. You were right, again. Sara replied in seconds. Told you. Now make her do one more puzzle. Connor had replayed his mother's apology in his mind over and over again. Her words had been shaky, emotional, sure. But genuine? That was still up for debate. He'd grown up with her games, with her guilt trips wrapped in velvet concern. He knew what real remorse looked like. and what manipulation wearing a tear-streaked mask felt like. Her visit had been dramatic, her confession shocking, but something about it still didn't sit right. And Sara? She knew better than to take a single moment of contrition at face value. "She's sorry she lost control," Sara said as she twisted the stem of her wine glass the next evening. "That doesn't mean she's sorry for what she did." Connor nodded. "Exactly, which is why I'm not bringing you back into her world until I know this wasn't just a meltdown. She needs to prove it." Sara leaned forward, that familiar fire in her eyes. "Then make her sweat." The next morning, Connor made the call. "Mom," he said calmly, "can you come by tonight? I was thinking we could try to get back into the old Sunday routine. Sara always did the times puzzle with me, and I miss that." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. Of course, sweetheart. I'd love that." When she arrived, she brought another basket, this one filled with snacks, candles, and a self-help book about reclaiming your inner peace. Connor didn't acknowledge it. He just pointed to the kitchen table where the Sunday edition of the Times lay open. "Ready?" She smiled tightly and sat down. The first 10 minutes were awkward. She didn't know many answers. He could tell she was second-guessing everything she said, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Good. Let her feel that. 5-letter word, overstep synonym, he read aloud. She paused. "Cross," he looked at her. "You tell me." She swallowed hard. "Push?" He stared at the page, pencil tapping rhythmically. "No, it's metal." His tone was cool, clinical, but his eyes met hers with an intensity that spoke volumes. His mother exhaled like she'd been holding her breath all week. Connor leaned back. "That's what you did. You meddled. You crossed a line. And now, we're not just picking up where we left off." She looked down at her hands. "I know. This isn't about you tolerating Sara," he said. "It's about you respecting her, accepting her. If you can't do that, then this, the puzzles, the visits, it stops." There it was, the ultimatum. His mother's face was pale. She looked more fragile than he'd ever seen her. Not because she was defeated, but because, for the first time, she was being held accountable. "I understand," she said. "I'll earn it, whatever it takes." Connor nodded but offered no comfort. That night, after she left, he called Sara. She passed the first test. Sara's voice was quiet. "You think it'll stick?" Connor didn't answer right away. He looked at the empty puzzle on the table, then out the window at the rain beginning to tap against the glass. "We're going to find out." For the first time in weeks, Connor thought they might finally be turning a corner. His mother had been quieter. She still called once a day, short, polite, and carefully worded conversations. No snide comments, no passive aggression. She even started texting Sara random recipe videos with captions like, "Thought of you." Sara would forward them to Connor with one-word commentary, "Creepy." Still, Connor allowed himself a cautious sense of hope. Maybe the lesson had landed. Maybe the silence and discomfort had done what years of polite boundaries never could. Then came the dinner invite. "I thought maybe we could all have dinner," his mother said over the phone, her tone soft, sweet, almost too sweet. "Just the 4 of us. Me, you, Sara, and your Aunt Linda. You know how she always liked Sara." Connor's stomach twisted. Something about her voice felt rehearsed, like lines memorized for a play she was barely holding together. Still, he agreed. And Sara, sharp as ever, didn't flinch. "Let her try," she said. "Let's see what game she's playing." The night arrived. His mother's house was spotless, unnaturally so. Candles flickered on every table. The scent of lemon and overcooked beef roast filled the air. Aunt Linda greeted them with her usual warmth, but even she seemed nervous, like she wasn't fully in on the script. Dinner started with pleasant small talk. Too pleasant. His mother laughed too hard, agreed too quickly, passed dishes with the grace of someone trying desperately to prove something. But then, the wine. Connor noticed it first, the way his mother kept refilling Aunt Linda's glass, then Sara's, then her own. Her hands shook slightly as she poured, her smile strained. Halfway through the second course, she snapped. "Well," she said loudly, interrupting Linda mid-sentence, "since we're all being so polite, maybe we should talk about what really happened." Connor froze. Sara didn't even blink. I mean, his mother continued, setting her fork down with an audible clink. You pretended to break up with my son, lied to this whole family, manipulated everyone into thinking you were done. Her eyes locked on Sara, wild and burning. You humiliated me. Silence. Then Sara set her napkin down gently and said, You humiliated yourself. I just gave you the mirror. Connor looked between them, jaw tight. His mother leaned forward, voice trembling. You think this makes you strong? Smart? All you've done is drive a wedge into this family. Sara's tone didn't change. That wedge was already there. You hammered it in every time you treated me like a problem instead of a partner. His mother's voice cracked. I apologized. I begged. I gave you space, gifts. You thought gifts were forgiveness, Connor cut in, his voice suddenly sharp. You thought control could be bought back. She turned to him, eyes brimming. I'm your mother. I know, he said. That's why this hurts. Aunt Linda looked like she wanted to vanish into the tablecloth. Sara stood up slowly. We gave you a chance. You were making progress. But this was a test too, and you just failed it. His mother's face collapsed in disbelief. You think I'm the villain, she whispered. Connor stood beside Sara. Not a villain, just a person who refuses to see past herself. They walked out together, leaving behind the roast, the candles, and the silence. That night, Connor didn't say much. He sat with Sara on their couch, hers again finally, and stared out the window. It's like she can't help herself, he said. She doesn't want to, Sara replied, because change means admitting she was wrong for a very long time. Connor nodded. So what do we do now? Sara leaned into him. We live, loudly, happily, in ways she can't control. He smiled faintly. You know she'll come back. Sara shrugged. Then she'll have to knock. It had been 12 days since the dinner blow-up, and the silence this time felt different. Not calculated, not strategic, just quiet. Connor hadn't received a call. No texts, no half-baked gift baskets. It was like his mother had been wiped off the map. He should have felt peace, relief, and part of him did. But another part knew the storm hadn't passed. It was just circling back. Sara, on the other hand, had returned fully to herself. Her steps were lighter, her laughter returned, and the tension in her shoulders, the one she never admitted was there, had finally started to melt. Still, Connor could see the question behind her eyes. How long until she tries again? He had that same thought every time his phone buzzed. On the 13th day, the silence broke. A letter arrived in their mailbox, handwritten. No return address. Just their names, in cursive that trembled across the envelope. Connor opened it at the kitchen table. Sara sat beside him, arms crossed, unreadable. Inside, 3 pages, front and back. His mother's handwriting, shaky but oddly composed. I didn't know how else to reach you. You won't pick up, you won't respond. I've said sorry so many times, and I'm starting to wonder if you want me to suffer instead of forgive me. I'm not asking to be welcomed back. I'm just asking for you to believe that I loved you, that I never wanted to hurt you or her. I thought I was doing what a mother was supposed to do. Protect her son. But I think I was protecting myself instead. Connor stopped reading. His fingers were tight on the paper. Sara gently reached over and took the letter, reading the rest in silence. I miss you. I miss watching you become this man I'm proud of, even if I didn't say it the right way. I'll stop writing now. If you never respond, I understand. I just hope one day you'll remember the better parts of me. There was no manipulative twist, no emotional blackmail, just a slow unraveling of a woman who had lost her grip and for once wasn't trying to force it back. Sara folded the letter neatly and set it on the table. Well, she said softly, that's different. Connor nodded. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just sat with it. Later that night, he stared at the ceiling in bed, wide awake. She's not who I hoped she'd be, he finally whispered. But maybe this is who she could be. Sara didn't respond right away. Then, only if she's willing to stay there, in the discomfort, not run from it. Yeah, Connor said. No more apologizing just to reset the game. Sara rolled to face him. So what do we do with this? Connor breathed in slowly, eyes fixed on the ceiling. We wait. Spring came late that year. The city was still gray around the edges, the trees just beginning to bloom, their branches hesitant, as if they too had been through a winter too long, too bitter. And in the heart of a small apartment, 2 floors above a cafe that smelled perpetually of burnt espresso, Connor sat on the balcony beside Sara, reading the same letter for the 3rd time. He hadn't replied yet. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Sara watched him carefully, a gentle patience in her silence. She hadn't pushed him. She knew this wasn't a battle he could fight with her sword. This had to be his. "She sounds tired," Connor said finally, folding the letter along its old crease. "For once, I don't think it's an act." Sara nodded. "That doesn't mean she deserves to be in our lives again." "No," Connor agreed, "but it means I can choose how much space she takes up in my head." It wasn't about revenge anymore. That part had burned out long ago, like a fire that had served its purpose to clear out the rot. What was left now was ash, soil, and the chance to plant something different. Not necessarily something new, but something honest. Connor didn't call. He didn't text. Instead, a week later, he wrote a letter back. "I read your words, all of them, and for the first time, I think you were writing to me, not just about yourself. That matters more than I can explain. But a relationship isn't a light switch. It doesn't just flip back on because someone says sorry. Forgiveness is earned, and trust has to be rebuilt, brick by brick. So here's where we are. I believe you meant what you wrote. I'm choosing to let go of the past for my own peace. But don't expect the same access to my life or to Sara's. You'll have to build that, and we won't make it easy. This isn't punishment. This is reality. I hope you're ready for it." He didn't sign it with love. He signed it with Connor. A man now, not a son desperate for his mother's approval. He mailed it without fanfare. And for a while, silence returned. No calls, no letters, not even a thank you. And that was okay, because Connor and Sara were living, not waiting, not flinching, just being. They repainted the living room, started a Sunday puzzle ritual again, laughed louder, slept deeper. Months later, a small envelope arrived. Inside, no words. Just a photo. It was a crossword puzzle, finished. Every square filled in, clean and perfect. Folded beneath it was a card with only one line. "I'll keep showing up right here until I've earned my way back into your life." No name, no pressure. Just a quiet beginning. Connor smiled, not because the past had been fixed, but because finally it wasn't holding him hostage anymore. And sometimes, that's the real revenge. Some people never change. And some of us stop waiting for them to. We'll see you in the next story.